The Christmas lights on my brother's house blinked red and green through the December fog, the same tacky display he put up every year since childhood. 2 years ago, Logan burned down my bakery and collected $50,000 in insurance money while I lost everything. The police couldn't prove it then. But tonight, while he's at midnight mass playing the devoted Christian, I'm finishing what I started 3 months ago. By morning, they'll have all the evidence they need. If you've ever watched someone destroy everything you built and walk away smiling, hit that like button. Subscribe if you believe that when the justice system fails, sometimes you have to build your own case. Because this story is about patience, planning, and making sure that karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. My name is Alice, and 2 years ago I owned the best bakery in Portland, Oregon. Sweet Alice's. I'd built it from nothing over 20 years, started in my apartment kitchen with a stand mixer and a dream, took out loans I barely qualified for, worked 18-hour days until my hands ached and my back screamed. Eventually, I had 6 employees, a loyal customer base that lined up Saturday mornings for my cinnamon rolls, and a storefront in a neighborhood finally coming back to life. The bakery wasn't just my business. It was my identity, my sanctuary, the place where I'd learned that hard work actually meant something. Every wedding cake I designed, every birthday order I fulfilled, every regular customer who knew my name, it all added up to a life I'd built with my own hands. My brother Logan had none of that work ethic. What he had was charm, the ability to talk his way into anything, and absolutely zero shame about taking shortcuts. By 35, he'd burned through 3 failed businesses, a car detailing service that folded after 6 months when customers complained their cars came back dirtier, some gym membership pyramid scheme that got him threatened with legal action, and a cryptocurrency investment thing that left him owing money to people who made me nervous at family gatherings. But Logan always landed on his feet. He'd show up at Sunday dinners at Mom's house with a new girlfriend, a new opportunity, a new story about how this time would be different. Our mother, Natalie, believed him every single time. Our father had died of a heart attack when we were teenagers, and Mom had spent the years since babying Logan, making excuses, seeing potential where the rest of us saw patterns. "He's trying, Alice," she'd say when I pointed out his string of failures. "Not everyone is as naturally driven as you. Some people need more time to find themselves." I stopped arguing with her after a while. It was exhausting. 2 years ago, Logan came to me desperate. His cryptocurrency thing had gone sideways. He owed $15,000 to someone he wouldn't name, and I could see real fear in his eyes. He wanted to invest in Sweet Alice's, become a partner, help me expand to a second location. He had $15,000 from an insurance settlement, he said, a minor car accident that had paid out. He wanted to put it towards something legitimate instead of wasting it. I should have said no. Every instinct told me to say no. But Mom had just been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer, and suddenly family felt more important than business sense. Logan was my only sibling, our only family beyond Mom. I said yes. The paperwork was simple. Logan became a 25% partner in Sweet Alice's. He contributed $15,000. He showed up for exactly 2 weeks, during which he mostly took Instagram photos of himself in an apron, told customers he was the businessman behind the brand, and rearranged my storage system in ways that made no sense. Then he disappeared back into whatever scheme occupied him next. I didn't mind. The bakery ran smoother without him underfoot anyway. And the $15,000 helped me buy a new commercial oven I'd been eyeing for months. For months later, Sweet Alice's burned to the ground. It happened on a Tuesday night in October. I closed at 7 p.m. like always. Done my usual cleanup routine. Wiped down counters, checked the display cases, swept the floors. I checked the ovens twice, the way I'd done every night for 20 years, making sure everything was off and cooling properly. I locked up, set the alarm, and drove home to my apartment 6 blocks away. The call came at 2:30 a.m. My security company first, then the fire department, then my insurance agent, all within an hour. Each call felt like a punch to the chest. By the time I got there, emergency lights were painting the street in red and blue. My building was a smoking skeleton against the night sky. Firefighters were still hosing down hot spots. The air smelled like chemicals and burnt sugar and destruction. 20 years of my life reduced to a pile of twisted metal and ash. I stood on the sidewalk in my pajamas and coat, watching my dreams literally go up in smoke, and I couldn't process it. Couldn't make it real. This had to be a nightmare I'd wake up from. But I didn't wake up. The investigators arrived as the sun came up. They spent 3 days sifting through the wreckage, taking samples, documenting everything. The fire marshal was a tired-looking woman named Teresa, who explained things to me in a patient voice that made me want to scream. "The fire started in your storage room," she said, showing me diagrams I couldn't focus on, "where you kept the industrial baking supplies. Someone used an accelerant, mineral spirits, or something similar. The fire spread too fast for this to be accidental. You're saying someone did this on purpose? I'm saying this is arson, Miss Patterson, and we're going to find out who." For 2 weeks, I lived in a fog of shock and grief. I stayed with Mom because I couldn't stand being alone in my apartment. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames. I kept thinking about the commercial mixer I'd saved 3 years to buy, the vintage cake stands I'd collected, the photos on the wall of every wedding cake I'd ever made. All gone. My employees called. 6 people who depended on me for their livelihoods, suddenly unemployed. Natalie, who was 63 and had worked for me for 12 years, cried on the phone. "What am I going to do, Alice? I can't retire yet. I need this job." I had no answers for her. The insurance company launched an investigation. That's when things got worse. 2 weeks after the fire, the investigator came to Mom's house where I was staying. His name was Patrick, and he carried a folder thick with documents that made my stomach drop. "Miss Patterson, we've discovered some concerning financial patterns in the months before the fire. Large cash withdrawals from the business account. Vendor invoices that don't quite match up with actual inventory. And there's the matter of your brother's partnership claim." I felt cold all over. "What about Logan?" "He filed an insurance claim for his 25% partnership stake. He's claiming a loss of $50,000 in potential equity. We're required to investigate whether the situation involves insurance fraud." My stomach turned to ice. "You think I burned down my own bakery?" "I think someone did. And the question we need to answer is who benefited." They cleared me eventually, but it took months. Months of invasive questions, reviewed bank statements, interviews with employees and customers. The insurance investigator went through my entire life with a microscope. They checked my alibi. Thank God I'd stopped at a gas station on the way home that night, and the timestamp on my credit card receipt proved where I was. Meanwhile, Logan's insurance claim sailed through in 6 weeks. $50,000 deposited into his account for a $15,000 investment and 2 weeks of Instagram photos. I called him. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. "Logan, we need to talk about your insurance claim." "Alice, hey, I know this is rough. I'm devastated too. I put real money into Sweet Alice's. Did you burn down my bakery?" The pause lasted too long. 3 seconds. 4. An eternity. "Jesus Christ, Alice. How can you even ask me that? I'm your brother. I lost my investment too. Thank God for insurance, right?" "Logan, I gotta go. Julia's calling me." He hung up. Didn't answer when I called back. Didn't return my messages. The insurance company eventually settled my claim, but by the time the lawyers took their fees and I paid off the remaining equipment loans, I was left with barely $30,000. Not enough to rebuild. Not enough to start over. Not enough to do anything but survive. I took a job managing the bakery department at a grocery store chain. $12 an hour. No creativity. No ownership. Just production baking in a fluorescent lit basement, making the same chocolate chip cookies day after day while teenagers asked me when their breaks were. From 20 years of building something beautiful to this. But I noticed things. 3 months after the fire, Logan bought a house. I saw it on Facebook. He posted photos of himself on the front porch of a 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood I couldn't afford to drive through. "New chapter," the caption said. 23 people commented congratulations. I zoomed in on the photo. New furniture visible through the windows. Professional landscaping. That house had cost at least $300,000, and he put cash down based on what Mom mentioned. A month later, Logan was driving a new truck. Silver Ford F-150, fully loaded with all the upgrades. He posted a photo of it with the caption, "Treated myself." 2 months after that, photos from Costa Rica. Logan and his girlfriend Julia on a beach, fancy resort drinks, the works. Living my best life, he'd written. And then Logan started going to church. Sacred Heart, the same Catholic church Mom attended. Every Sunday morning, right in the front pew. Mom called to tell me, her voice full of joy, "Alice, you should see the change in him. He's really found faith." Father Jerry says Logan's been volunteering, helping with the food pantry. "I'm so proud of him." I said nothing, just listened to her praise the brother who'd burned down my life. But I watched. I started driving past his new house at different times, learning his patterns. Sunday morning church at 9. Wednesday evening Bible study at 7. Friday nights at a sports bar called Rookies with his construction buddies. Home by midnight. His girlfriend Julia had moved in. She worked as a dental hygienist, seemed genuinely kind based on her social media. She posted photos of them hiking, cooking dinner together, and watching movies. She had no idea what kind of man she was living with. I started researching. Not in obvious ways. I used the library computers during my lunch breaks, cleared my search history, and stayed careful. I read everything I could find about the arson investigation. Case studies, forensic reports, legal proceedings. I learned about accelerant residue analysis, poor pattern recognition, and how investigators reconstructed fire scenes years later. I learned that most arsonists who get away with it once try again, and that they almost always use the same methods, the same materials. Creatures of habit. I learned patience. Because here's what I realized, being angry wasn't enough. Knowing Logan was guilty wasn't enough. Even being right wasn't enough. I needed evidence. Real evidence. The kind the investigators had failed to find. And I needed to be smart about it. One mistake, one moment of sloppiness, and I'd be the one in prison. So I waited. I planned. I thought about every possible angle, every way this could go wrong. 2 years is a long time to hate someone. Long enough that the sharp, hot rage dulls into something colder, harder, more focused. I thought about Mom, who would never believe what Logan had done, who attended his church services and praised his spiritual growth, while I made $12 an hour surrounded by industrial mixers that weren't mine. I thought about Natalie, my former employee, who'd had to take a job at Walmart at 63 because of what Logan did. I thought about all the wedding cakes I'd never make. The neighborhood kids who used to press their faces against my window on Saturday mornings. The regular customers who still stopped me on the street to say they missed my croissants. I thought about Logan sleeping soundly in his $300,000 house, bought with my ashes. And I planned. 3 months ago, I started the real work. I'd been to Logan's house before. Family dinners when Mom pushed us to reconcile. A barbecue last summer, helping Julia move some furniture she'd bought off Facebook Marketplace. My presence there was documented. Normal. If my fingerprints or DNA showed up, there were innocent explanations. But I'd noticed something during those visits. Logan kept his garage locked, even from Julia. His workshop. Julia had laughed when I asked about it. Men and their private spaces, right? He's got tools and projects in there. Says he needs somewhere that's just his. That interested me greatly. I started dropping by occasionally with innocent excuses, returning Mom's Tupperware that Logan had borrowed, bringing over leftovers Mom had sent. Once, I claimed I was in the neighborhood and just wanted to say hi. Julia always let me in, always chatted, never suspected anything. During one visit when Logan was at his Friday happy hour and Julia was working a late shift, I took my time. Used the bathroom. Got turned around looking for it. Tested doors. Found the garage accessible through an interior door in the laundry room. Locked, but the locks in Logan's house were basic. The kind you could open with a bent paperclip if you'd watched enough YouTube tutorials. And I had. I opened it. Spent exactly 3 minutes inside while my heart hammered. Didn't touch anything. Just looked. Memorized the layout. The workbench was cluttered with tools. Storage shelves with paint cans and supplies. The general chaos of someone who kept a space private because it was disorganized, not secret. I closed the door. Locked it again. Visited with Julia when she got home 20 minutes later. Perfectly normal visit. Over the next 2 months, I made 3 more visits, each time with a legitimate reason. Each time, I slipped into that garage for 90 seconds while Julia was in another room. The first time, I placed a half-empty container of mineral spirits on his storage shelf. Not some exotic accelerant, the exact type available at any Home Depot, commonly used in workshops. The type that had been identified in trace amounts at Sweet Alice's. I'd bought it with cash from a store 40 miles away, 8 months earlier. Wore gloves, wiped it completely clean, let it sit in my storage unit for months. I placed it between other legitimate workshop chemicals where it looked like it belonged. The second time, I tucked shop rags in his rag bin. The kind anyone might have. Nothing obvious. But if tested, they'd show trace amounts of the same accelerant family. Just rags that suggested someone had worked with these chemicals. The third time, I planted something subtle. A crumpled cash receipt from a hardware store 3 blocks from Sweet Alice's, dated 2 days before the fire. Just general supplies, screws, sandpaper, basic items. I stuck it between old paperwork on his workbench where it looked forgotten. Not proof of anything, but suggestive. Then I waited. Let 3 months pass. Let us settle on everything. Let it all become part of the garage's natural ecosystem. I kept up my occasional visits, always with Julia or Mom present, always documented, always normal. And I waited for Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve arrived with freezing rain and fog that made Portland look ghostly. I spent the day off work, reviewing my plan for the 100th time. Every step, every detail, every possible thing that could go wrong. I knew Logan's schedule by heart now. Midnight Mass at Sacred Heart. He never missed it. Not since his religious transformation. Julia would be with him. They'd leave at 11. Wouldn't be home until at least 1 a.m. with the socializing after. That gave me time. At 10 p.m., I dressed in dark jeans and a coat. Nothing suspicious. It was December. Everyone dressed like this. I drove my regular Honda to within 6 blocks of Logan's house and parked on a residential street. I walked the rest of the way through light rain. Most houses were dark. People at church services or already in bed. Logan's tacky Christmas lights blinked through the fog. A plastic nativity scene, inflatable snowman, colored lights outlining the roof. So, perfectly Logan, it almost made me laugh. I didn't break in. I had a key. Julia had given it to me 2 months ago when I'd offered to check on their dog while they went to Seattle for a long weekend. Just in case of emergencies, she'd said, pressing the spare into my hand. She never asked for it back. I let myself in the front door. The alarm beeped. I had 30 seconds. I punched in the code I'd memorized from watching Julia enter it. The beeping stopped. I stood in their dark entryway, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of a clock. I walked through the house to the laundry room, found the interior garage door, opened it with the bent paperclip technique I'd practiced 100 times on my own locks. The garage smelled like motor oil and sawdust. Logan's truck was gone, at church with him. I was alone with what I created. I spent 4 minutes inside. I didn't add anything new. Everything I needed was already here, aged and settled. I just adjusted, moved the mineral spirits container slightly forward on the shelf where it would be more visible during a search, draped one of the rags over the edge of the workbench where it would catch attention, made sure the receipt was positioned where a thorough investigation would find it without it looking deliberately placed. I was creating the scene Logan should have left behind if he'd been careless, if he'd kept the accelerant around after using it because he'd gotten away with it, if he'd been arrogant enough to think he was untouchable. At 11:43 p.m., I locked the garage door behind me. I walked back through the house, reset the alarm, let myself out the front door, locked it. I walked 6 blocks through freezing rain back to my car. At 1:15 a.m., I was at the public library downtown. I checked the hours. They had a 24-hour computer lab for the holidays. I signed in with my regular library card. Nothing suspicious. I use computers here often for job applications. I created a new email account using completely false information. Then I sent 3 messages. To the fire marshal's cold case tip line. The Sweet Alice's Bakery arson from 2 years ago. You should check Logan Patterson's garage at 2847 Maple Street. Someone told me they heard him talking about keeping materials from a job. Might be nothing, but thought you should know. Similar messages went to the police non-emergency tip line and my old insurance company's fraud investigation department. Nothing dramatic. Nothing too specific. Just a concerned citizen reporting something suspicious they'd overheard. I cleared my browser history, signed out, and went home. And for the first time in 2 years, I slept through the night. The call came 2 weeks later. Not Christmas morning, because that's not how investigations actually work. Anonymous tips get logged, reviewed, prioritized. The holidays slow everything down. It takes time to get warrants, coordinate searches. 2 weeks. That's how long I waited, going to work at the grocery store, helping mom with her post-chemo checkups, living my normal life. Then my phone rang. Mom's number. Alice, something's happened. Her voice was shaking. The police came to Logan's house this morning with a warrant. They searched his garage. They're saying they found evidence about your fire. I sat down slowly on my couch. What kind of evidence? Materials, they said. The same chemicals that were in your bakery. And a receipt from near your place. Alice, they're saying Logan might have been involved. I let the silence stretch for 3 long seconds. I don't understand, Mom whispered. Why would he keep evidence? That doesn't make sense. I don't know, Mom. My voice came out exactly right. Confused, hesitant. Maybe he thought he'd gotten away with it? People get careless or arrogant. But he's been so changed. The church, the volunteering. Mom, I need to think about this. Can we talk later? I hung up before she could respond. The investigation moved methodically after that. The fire marshal reopened Sweet Alice's case with new evidence. The accelerant in Logan's garage tested positive for the same chemical family found in my bakery's wreckage. The receipt placed him near the scene days before the fire. His financial windfall looked newly suspicious in this context. The district attorney held a press conference. Cold cases can be solved with new evidence and good police work, she said. She loved this. A greedy brother brought to justice, a sympathetic victim vindicated. Logan denied everything, said someone planted it. But his story had fatal flaws. Who would plant evidence? Why? How would they access his locked garage? Julia confirmed she'd never been inside, didn't have a key. The lock showed no signs of forced entry from outside. His lawyer tried to point at me. The victim had a motive to frame him, but I had an alibi for every time frame that mattered. Work schedules, time-stamped security footage from the grocery store. Mom could confirm I'd been with her several evenings. And most importantly, why would I wait 2 years? If I was going to frame someone, wouldn't I have done it immediately? Why let him enjoy his blood money for 24 months first? The defense couldn't answer that. Julia left him on New Year's Day. I saw the moving truck from down the street. She looked small and sad, carrying boxes with 2 friends helping. She'd posted one thing on Facebook. Sometimes you don't know people at all. Mom called me weekly, torn between her children, torn between the son she wanted to believe in and the daughter who'd lost everything, torn between faith and evidence. I listened, never pushed, let her work through it. The trial is scheduled for June. Logan's lawyer is still arguing planted evidence, but they can't explain the mechanics. Can't show how someone would have access. Can't provide an alternative theory that makes sense. The prosecutor says it's a solid case. Not perfect, mostly circumstantial, but solid. Logan will probably take a plea deal. I visit Mom every Sunday now. We don't talk about Logan much. She's aging fast, the cancer treatment, and this new stress taking their toll. Sometimes she looks at me with questions in her eyes she doesn't ask. Sometimes I wonder if she knows. But she doesn't say anything. And neither do I. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I waited 2 years, planned for months. And when I finally acted, I didn't burn his house down. I'm not an arsonist. I just made sure the evidence of his arson was where investigators could finally find it. Did I plant evidence? That depends on your definition. I put materials in his garage that were consistent with the crime he'd committed. Materials he probably should have disposed of, but was too arrogant to bother with. I simply made visible what should have been there all along. The law might call it evidence tampering. I call it justice the system failed to deliver. And I sleep just fine. Look, what Alice did isn't justice, it's revenge. Logan deserved consequences, but Alice planted evidence. That's a felony. Do I understand why she did it? Absolutely. The system failed her. 2 years of watching her brother live off her ashes while she made $12 an hour? I get the rage. But here's the cost. Alice had to become someone who commits crimes to get even. Maybe she sleeps fine now, but she crossed a line she can't uncross. Was it worth it? Only she knows. Here's my question. Would you have done the same? If the system completely failed you, would you plant evidence against someone you knew was guilty? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. If this made you think about where justice ends and revenge begins, hit that like button and subscribe. Sometimes taking justice into your own hands means becoming something you never wanted to be. That's the real price.